Hey, team players, and welcome to Local Football Flavors breakdown of fantasy, according to ESPN, what their 13th round would be. And the reason you pay attention to us is we win leagues. Follow us throughout the season. We'll get the in-depth breakdown, but it's got to start with the draft. And, Bob, I'm going to kick this to you to start.
You're not going to kick it off. We're going to kick it off right here with saying, this is ESPN's list from the beginning of June. Ezekiel Elliot at 130 seems criminal.
It does.
Particularly when he had one of the worst years of his career last year. No matter what team that's going to draft him, this isn't we're not talking about, a player in their prime. Zeke is not in his prime anymore. Zeke is he's very far out of his prime. He did not perform at the talent level that he was even just a couple of years ago. For this reason and this reason alone, we're not ranking Zeke any higher than 130. We're not talking about him. It's not worth talking about.
That's fair.
Don't draft him, and if you do, take him 3 rounds from now, 4 rounds from now, 5 rounds from now.
Give him your last pick.
He'll still be there. But the player that I think we need to start with here, there's actually 2, and I'm going to start with the first one, who's a wide receiver, is Quentin Johnston.
Okay.
Quentin Johnston is the quintessential high upside player. Now, why do I say that? Well, for the same reason that we spoke that Keenan Allen could potentially vault into the top 5, for the same reason that we spoke about Mike Williams potentially being in the top 15, top 10, it's the same reason Quentin Johnston could be there as well. And it's due to injuries.
Oh, it is.
If, for any one reason...
It's got 2 very fragile bridges. As soon as one of them breaks, like with the one that happened just in Philadelphia, this could happen.
If for any reason Allen goes down, Quentin Johnston will take over the role that Mike Williams would play, and Mike Williams would take over Allen's role. If Williams goes down, Johnston will step right into Williams' role. And there's a very good chance, and this is why I don't like Eckler this year, is that the targets are going to be a little bit weird for the
There's
Chargers
a good chance he still gets good volume and neither of them go down.
And there's a very good chance that he plays the third.
I think he was the most talented receiver in the draft.
Even though...
Especially for what the Chargers want to do.
So here's the thing. I think now, with all of the resources that we have, Quentin Johnston is oftentimes sitting around Michael Thomas, Gabe Davis, Juju and stuff. I think Quentin Johnston is a player that people should think about drafting 3 rounds ago, 2 rounds ago.
I give you that.
Because the ceiling is so high. And in a pass-happy attack, I think the floor is going to be much higher than we think it's going to be at certain points in time.
Oh, he has by far the highest floor of that group.
The next player on this list that I think needs to be discussed is Gino Smith. Gino Smith's year last year felt like an anomaly from what we know about Gino Smith. Gino Smith's year, as the year went on, did not get better. It got worse. Now, statistically speaking, he was still a good option in fantasy football. But when we take a look at Geno Smith's numbers, he's one of the guys that I'm actually saying to myself, hey, Bob, you need to come out of the draft with this guy. He has the weapons. The weapons are there. If you look at his game log from last year and you just take right before the bye, there were only 2 games where he didn't accumulate a touchdown, which is bad. You don't want that out of your quarterback. But the turnovers are kept to a minimum.
That was something about Gino's game.
He had 11 interceptions. He had 8 fumbles. That is not for drafting. Where you're thinking about Daniel Jones, Daniel Jones had the rushing touchdowns, which gets you more points in a lot of leagues. You're seeing quarterbacks that rush a lot get going higher in the draft because they get more points. Gino is purely passing.
Yeah.
You're looking at Gino and you say, he got 30 touchdowns last year. His team got better. So unless they figured him out, I mean,
Well, he did have a much worse second half of the year than first half of the year, which would imply they figured him out.
He did. You would say that he did. Yes. I mean, he had 3 1-touchdown games. But if I'm in this half of the draft and I'm drafting my quarterbacks now, I'm also thinking about pairing them with another quarterback. And this is where I said, a combination of Russell Wilson and Geno Smith, which would have looked
that would look great,
which would have looked really weird a couple of years ago because they were both on the same team. doesn't look bad. And
No,
it's
it
something
doesn't.
that you could come out of the draft with and be realistically at least a little bit happy with. Because as I look at these players on the board right now, outside of Elijah Mitchell being the handcuff running back to McCaffrey,
Yeah.
and what we were saying, you want to take the guys for the guys that are going to get hurt. We know McCaffrey's going to go down at some point in time. They're trying to limit his load. Elijah Mitchell was a good option. But if you haven't yet got your starters, I mean, Quentin Johnston is just screaming out and saying, take me 3 rounds ago. Take me 3 rounds ago.
Absolutely he is, Bob. The one that I want to bring up here that just as you started the show, Zeke should not be drafted. Kyler Murray should not be drafted because of a lot of reasons. First off, even at his most optimistic projection, he's not coming back until week 8. Are you going to keep a dead roster spot and basically 3 quarterbacks on your roster to get through bye season? No, of course you're not. No one can ever do that. So he's going to be a wasted draft pick. He's not worth taking. That being said, Quentin Johnston, you just hit everything great about him. Ertz on Arizona is the second most talented pass catcher on that team. He is rippled with injuries. However, in a team that's always losing, a team that has James Conner as his running back, who inevitably will go down, they're going to be throwing the ball like crazy. And they're going to be throwing the ball downfield, and Zach Ertz is the guy who capitalizes, right? So Ertz is the one of this group that I would believe give me upside potential. I flipped down 2 people to Zay Jones there. Zay Jones, I think, is just basically getting carried over from his stats last year and his name. The fact that Calvin Ridley is back, even if you don't think Calvin Ridley is going to be a dude again, he's taking away both of the Joneses receiving yardage or receiving targets, at least, in Jacksonville. Because Carson Kirk basically won't be affected. Jones is the one that will be. And yes, if you're picking Zay Jones, you're picking it upon the risk that you think Calvin Ridley is not going to be relevant. He's not going to be an impact player and basically not be on the team. If that's what you believe, Zay Jones is relevant. However, I'm not in that camp. I think they're still going to force it to Ridley, even if he doesn't have it. So, therefore, I'm on the side of not wanting Zay Jones, but that's the argument for taking him. I'll go to the left one there and Alan Lazard. Rodgers didn't like Alan Lazard when he was in Green Bay. Like, why would he think he likes him more in New York? It makes no answer to me whatsoever.
Joe,
what the hell?
I don't even want to talk about Alan Lazard. He is one of the most undraftable players in the league this year, for the sheer fact that his situation, he may have changed cities, but his situation hasn't changed.
Not a sad case.
The player I want to talk about here is Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz was a supremely talented tight end last year who got a bad shake and got hurt.
Yeah.
And during the interim where he got hurt, Trey McBride stepped up, came to the board, and now we're thinking, well, Zach Ertz might not be ready for week 1. Well, if all my chips are on the table and I'm the Arizona Cardinals, I know I'm probably not going to win a lot this year. So what's Zach Ertz's contract look like? Do I have him for another? Like, I'm saying that Zach Ertz right now, if you're taking him in this round, you're probably already have a tight end. It is logistical. It is a logistical possibility that you've already drafted a tight end, because
a lot of them have gone at this point.
As I sit here today, if we were to go through these tight ends, you've probably already 10 tight ends have probably already been taken.
Yeah.
And so to take
But I think there's a chance that when healthy, Ertz is talented wise enough to be a top 5 tight end.
This is why I bring this up, though, is that take a second tight end in a 10-team league at this point in time in the draft. I think that if you do...
I personally would not have taken a tight end. I wouldn't even take one in the 13th round.
If you do like Zach Ertz...
I'd wait till the 15th round for my tight end.
If you do like Zach Ertz, you could probably still even get him a little bit around later. But this is always to say with Trey McBride's on the board, it's going to be deadly. And Donta Foreman, that situation there with the Bears running backs, For the same reason when we talked about Khalil Herbert,
Mm-hmm.
the same discussion could be had about Donta Foreman paired with Justin Fields. Donta Foreman's a good running back. We saw that out of his time in Carolina last year. We saw that when he was in Tennessee. He's a very good running back. He can perform when asked to perform.
Mm-hmm.
But he really, unless out of all these running backs, I think that Donta Foreman has the best opportunity to step in and give you the same production as the replacement.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't Chicago already splits carries, is what they do.
Yeah, and I don't think Elijah Mitchell is
gonna get. Well, Elijah Mitchell will get the ball in blowouts, which San Francisco is gonna have a lot of them. So I mean, that's a thing. San Francisco plays their division. 4 of those games are blowouts. San Francisco then plays the NFC East, which you got to believe that they're going to be able to have some pretty handy games against the Giants and Skins. So therefore, you look at the rest of them and go, that's 10 games of their 17-game schedule, where you can make an argument going, even before McCaffrey gets hurt, you'd say Mitchell gets some carries. But you're right. In terms of just straight the way they draw it up and want to do it, Devontae Foreman definitely is slated for more action than Elijah Mitchell. And, I agree with you there. The one guy I do want to mention here, because he kind of seems like, what? And this might be the first time a lot of our listeners actually hear this, and I apologize for asking about the butcher saying his name. Chigazam Akanquo? Is that how you said it?
Akanquo.
Akanquo.
That's the way it looks, Akanquo.
So I had to go with this here. The Titans' passing game last year was not NFL worthy. It quite frankly was borderline D2 worthy in college. There was a lot of things that were just not right there. And you bring back Tannehill, Henry's healthy. They like doing they have created average tight ends in the past. But Tennessee in this system has never made the world beater, amazing pass catching tight end. And this is nothing against Akanquo now, but as I say, Akanquo, I'll get this right never. But
let me pause what you're saying here, and this is for anybody that as you're listening and you're thinking about your tight end situation. We've mentioned a lot of really good tight ends. And they're all pretty much the same value. It just depends on what you're looking for and when you want to drop them. Akanquo, for the terrible time that the Titans had of scoring last year, he was targeted 5 times within the 15-yard line. 3 receptions, 2 touchdowns. So when they get there, he's an option. And that's really important to think about when you're taking a player. Austin Hooper's gone. Austin Hooper was targeted 7 times in the red zone. You give those same targets to Akanquo,
5 more touchdowns.
And that's 7 more targets. That's 2 more touchdowns that Hooper scored. So that's 4 touchdowns. I'm sitting here in my tight end position, and I can get a tight end that's going to score 4 touchdowns throughout the year. Yeah, he's not going to be your world beater going down the field. So he's not going to be a yardage guy. You've sandbagged yourself into getting someone that is going to just get purely touchdowns. But he's talented. Is the situation any better? No, it really isn't.
Nope.
So if I'm looking at this board, though, out of the players, and I'm going to rank them right now, is Quentin Johnston's number 1. He doesn't deserve to be here. He's going to be drafted 3-4 rounds ahead of this come August. Next is Gino Smith for the same reasons we said. I love Gino Smith here, and pairing Russell Wilson with Gino Smith is purely conjecture, but I think it's a combination that has a good chance of winning you your league this year, and it's a possibility. Next up would be, let's face it, no one. But Quentin Johnston, Gino Smith, and then I take Donta Foreman for the same reasons that I suggested, that the Bears situation is very interesting because they essentially have 3 running backs there. They split them like a 60-40, 70-30 kind of split usually in the season. If Donta Foreman's hot, he's on. You probably didn't start him the week that he was hot, but you could trade him. That's darn sure you can do that. Next up after that, again, Elijah Mitchell, for the same reasons that I said. If you're going to take someone's backup running backs, you might as well take the guys that are going to get hurt. McCaffrey has a hard time staying on the field. Elijah Mitchell here is a good option. Next, Akanquo and Ertz are in the same realm for me. They both have bad situations for them. They're both talented players. So Ertz has given you a history of being talented.
Sure has.
Akanquo hasn't. But the targets are there in the red zone for Ertz. The targets are there for Akanquo in the red zone. That's what I want out of a tight end. Who do I think is going to be in the red zone more? That's the problem.
Titans, no doubt.
And I would say the Titans. So I would take Akanquo there over Ertz. And then the undraftables, Alan Lazard, Murray, and Elliot in that order. And I don't even need to order them because you're not even thinking about drafting.
You're showing me. So my order is going to be similar, obviously. As much as I keep saying I don't like rookie receivers, which I don't, Quentin Johnston is the exception to this. I did think he was the best receiver in the draft. I do think the Chargers made a mistake by drafting him, and those two sentences can be true because they needed an edge rusher. So with that being said, I would start with Johnston. My number 2 on here is I do believe they're putting Ertz out there. They need to put Ertz out there to just get value to trade him, and I think they're going to have to showcase him as a result. Bad quarterbacks will lean on their tight ends. I think Ertz is going to give you value there. Following that, I do like Foreman and then Mitchell as my number 4 in this group, just because Mitchell is going to give me stuff consistently. Gino Smith, it's hard for me to overcome the second half of the year's shortcomings. He rode a great start and got so much love as the year went on, and then essentially disappeared. To give you an example, a quarterback that everyone hated last year did better than him was Kenny Pickett. So that's an example of what the second half year trajectories are. I don't want to be part of that Geno Smith experience. Zay Jones comes next by default.
Did I rank Zay Jones?
Yeah, you did. So Zay Jones, then Lazard, then Murray and Elliott.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much you can say about that.
Yeah. All right, team players, if you want to come on and say you can beat us, we will be doing a best ball league as we get closer to August. Join us, leave your information in the comments, and if you haven't already, click like and subscribe and become a team player.